I think there are many Republicans across D.C. breathing a sigh of relief today.
He went out on a limb on this one, and it got sawed off pretty quickly. My advice would be, don't do it again.
We need to be concerned about who he's going to nominate in place of Gaetz. Let's just realize we're in the chaos again, and here it is. It's just beginning.
All right, not too surprising. Reactions over at MSNBC there, and to Matt Gaetz' decision to withdraw from consideration as Trump's attorney general to go through the process. So the question is now, who will it be? It's an extremely important position and someone who will shake up the Justice Department, which is clear. There was a mandate to do that. I think a lot of people, in terms of polling before the election, said they wanted to see a complete overhaul in a lot of ways in the government. Let's bring in Tomi Lahren, host of Tomi Lahren is Fearless on Outkick, and Mark Thiessen, a Fox News contributor. Great to have both of you with us. I'm not sure how much we need to really belabor the fact that Gaetz has dropped out, because that is the fact. The only question that remains is whether or not he'll serve in Congress. He could go through a process and try to reinstate himself in the next Congress because he was elected and then he dropped out right before that Ethics Committee report was about to come out. So the big question for the country, Tomi, is who would be next, and what would that pick mean? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll tell you this, Martha. I think this whole thing was very strategic, and in my estimation, it has the art of the deal written all over it. Obviously, Matt Gaetz was a very controversial pick. Some would say maybe the most controversial pick that Trump could have selected. So now whoever he picks as his second choice, they'll probably receive a little bit less scrutiny. They won't have as much heat on them. So I think both the nomination and the withdrawal of Matt Gaetz was very strategic for the Trump team. It also took some of the heat off of the other picks that were also controversial, but perhaps less so than Matt Gaetz. So I think it kind of gave cover for some of the other controversial picks. And whoever he picks as his second choice, I think that they're going to have a much easier time because they will not be as controversial as Matt Gaetz. It'd be hard to find somebody more controversial for that pick. So I think this was very strategic.
Do you think Matt Gaetz was complicit in that plan that you lay out, Tomi?
Listen, this is all just my theory and my speculation, but I wouldn't put it past him. I think that this is a very strategic team. You watch the media and Democrats melt down over this for an entire week. I think, as Senator Fetterman said, this was an epic troll, maybe all part of the plan, the art of the deal.
All right, Mark Thiessen, your thoughts on this and who you would like to see next?
Yeah, so first of all, nobody bats 1,000, and Donald Trump is doing a great job. He's got great picks from Elise Stefanik to Marco Rubio to Doug Burgum, all the way to Tom Homan. I mean, most of his cabinet is going to sail through. So this is a small bump in the road. But what it shows is, look, it used to be you'd do recess appointments because the opposition would filibuster a nominee. Well, the Democrats got rid of the filibuster for executive nominations, so he can basically he just needs to get somebody that can get 50+1 votes in the Senate in his own party. So the lesson from this is take your time. I know you're in a hurry and I know you want to move fast, but take your time. Pick somebody that can muster a majority of Republicans in the Senate and vet them first with the Senate. Go to the Senate. I mean, I think if Donald Trump's team had gone to the Senate and said, hey, we're thinking about nominating Matt Gaetz, they would have gotten big flashing red lights saying, don't do this. And they probably could have avoided this whole week's disaster.
Mark, is there somebody that you would like to see on that short list?
So I hesitate to give the president advice on cabinet picks. There is a whole host of great lawyers who have been defending him in these cases. There are a lot of great lawyers who appear on our air all the time, like Andy McCarthy and others. There is the conservative legal establishment is replete with fantastic options for him to choose from. So I would say take your time, do it right, vet them. Make sure that they've got enough support in the Senate, and pick one of the great conservative lawyers. I mean, look at the list of people that he considered for the Supreme Court.
Absolutely. Well, a lot of them
last
have
time around. There'd be some great AGs there.
Well, you know what? Katie Pavlich just posted this on X. Trump could put Justice Alito up for Attorney General and then fill a SCOTUS seat. Tomi, what do you think about that?
I think that certainly is very interesting. But, you know, I think he's got a deep bench. I think he's got a lot of people to choose from, a lot of talent, a lot of people that he knows are loyal to him. He's had many years to figure this out. So I think that this is very strategic. I don't, as I said before, think this was a misstep. I think this was actually calculated. And I think it was a brilliant, genius move. I can't wait to see who number 2 is.
This was the reporting earlier today. This actually came from CNN. And they say that after being asked for comment on this story about a second sexual encounter between Gaetz and a 17-year-old at a party, Gaetz announced that he was backing out as President-elect Donald Trump's Attorney General nominee. We don't know whether one caused the other, but you had been supportive of this nomination. So what is your reaction? Are you disappointed that he dropped out?
Well, what I've said is I'm generally supportive of President Trump being able to select and staff his administration. So I'll give all the nominees the benefit of the doubt. And we have a confirmation process. This process obviously was truncated early. Can't disagree with the decision Matt Gaetz made. He was controversial. He understood that. I actually appreciate the fact that he withdrew so that President Trump can put somebody else in place, maybe less controversial. But let's face it, this is going to be a pitched battle. I've been a target of the corruption within the FBI, so I know exactly why President Trump wants to have somebody who's incredibly loyal, who's going to be aggressive, who's not going to wilt under pressure. This isn't going to be an easy job. So Matt Gaetz obviously is going to be a strong advocate, and I understand why President Trump wanted somebody like him. He's going to have to find somebody like him to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think about President Obama and Eric Holder. You think about JFK having RFK as his person at the Department of Justice. And I think, there were missteps early with the early appointee. He wasn't happy with Jeff Sessions. That was pretty clear. In the last round, he wants somebody who he can trust. This is a new piece of sound from Senate Judiciary Chairman Dick Durbin. This just came in. Let's play this. Oh, it's a quote. It's time for Donald Trump to put forward a serious nominee for Attorney General who will fight for equal justice for all Americans. Your thoughts, your reaction to that, Senator Johnson?
Well, again, what Durbin would like is somebody from the good old boys club, and that's what Trump had in his first term. And he realized that within the Department of Justice, the FBI, other agencies, there were people, deep state actors, that undermined, in some cases, sabotaged his administration. So he's had 4 years to contemplate that. He's coming in far more wary, much more aware. And, listen, I love the pick, for example, of Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to head up the Department of Government Efficiency. Again, this is sitting outside the government, but these people are going to push the envelope, and they're going to be making suggestions and recommendations that President Trump needs the secretaries to implement, to have the courage to engage in the battle. It's not going to be easy. I'm old enough to remember Bill Clinton say the era of big government is over. Sure. No, it's not. It is expanded almost exponentially. They're not going to go quietly in the night. So this is going to be a pitched battle. President Trump needs warriors inside these departments and agencies. So who fits that bill to you? Now that there's an opening again, who would you like to see the president-elect considering for that very, very important spot? Listen, I'll leave that up to the president. And I will basically support his nominees unless I see something very disqualifying in the background. Again, it's up to him. I'm not going to, from the sidelines, just start suggesting people. But again, the type of people, we need aggressive individuals who are willing to engage in the battle. They're not going to shy away from the legacy corporate media who are obviously opposed to President Trump's agenda. He needs a warrior. So about recess appointments, the Supreme Court basically can put a lot of pressure against allowing a recess appointment that is done, not outside of the intersession breaks that the Senate takes. Would you advise that the incoming administration, not go the recess appointment route? Well, listen, I've said that the confirmation process is completely out of hand. 12 to 1,400 people is ridiculous. Democrat, Republican presidents ought to have the ability to staff their administration. So I would personally cut that down. If we develop a backlog, I'm happy to start regular order. If there's not much of a backlog, and let's face it, it takes time to identify people and nominate them. But if we start getting a unreasonable backlog, I have no problem with recess appointments. Do you make a distinction on that from some of the lower level appointments versus cabinet appointments? Yeah, absolutely. Listen, it's best to have cabinet officials and other high-profile officials go through the confirmation process so there's not an asterisk beside their name. You want them to have the Senate backing, the backing of the president. So that's by far the best route. Yeah. So again, I contemplate the way I look at recess as just a backlog of deputies and assistant deputies, that type of thing that he needs, because just one person at the top is not going to be able to clean up the deep state. Yeah. These secretaries are going to need allies in these agencies. They need to be confirmed quickly.
As we've told other folks, look, this process works, and in this particular case, Senate is designed to either offer advice or consent. I think the president made the right decision in this particular case, and his reason for that, I don't know for sure, but most certainly it could have been the fact that maybe some of the information that's come out over the last couple of days might be some information that the president simply didn't have beforehand. But the president now has the opportunity to make another choice, and there are a number of good individuals that would fit very well into that position, and I think the president will make the right move. Look, we're looking forward to working with the president to get the job done. It means we want to get his team in place as soon as possible. We really do look forward to finding the path forward and literally getting on with the business of governing and doing it appropriately, cleaning up the mess that's been created over the last couple of years, and starting with tax policy just to begin with.
You indicated that the president had a role in this, the president-elect. Now, Matt Gaetz said he made this decision on his own, but you seem to think he was pushed more than he jumped on his own.
No, I simply would assume that the president would make the final decision and that they probably did it consultatively, but I don't know. I have not spoken to either one of them, but in this particular case, the president still has the ability to nominate someone else, and there are a number of very good qualified individuals there that I think would help the president with his agenda, and that's our goal.
Do you know if there's any truth to this notion? It's out there a lot. You've heard it many times, probably more than you care to, that Gaetz was a sacrificial lamb that paved the way for other controversial nominees, Pete Hegseth, for example, at Defense. Do you buy that? Do you agree with that?
You know, I really do not agree with that. I think that's the wrong approach. I think that's just the Washington, D.C. talk. I think the president takes them one at a time, and I know in the Senate we take them one at a time. And look, we start out with the premise that we want the president to succeed. We give the president the benefit of the doubt in his nominees for the cabinet positions, but we still have a constitutional responsibility for advice and consent. And we take that seriously. But the president, we want him to do this right. We want him to succeed. We want him to have a good team around him. And look, we look forward to having a good series of nominees in front of us. We'll do our due diligence. We'll ask the questions, but we want them to succeed as well.
You know, you've been very conscious of some of this overspending that's been going on and the growth of the bureaucracy. And sure enough, there's a move afoot on the part of the incoming Trump administration to address that. But it's extended, really, if you think about it, Senator, to the size of cabinets. I was looking back at prior presidencies where back in JFK's time, for example, he could fit his entire cabinet right at that table. Right, and now it's extended to chairs behind the big table, and as the cabinet gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Now you've looked at the education department, for example, and argued that's one that could go. Could you explain why and what you did today to foster the process?
Absolutely. Look, we have actually introduced the legislation that we've been working on for over a year, which is to eliminate the Federal Department of Education, send the vast majority of the decision-making back to the states and the tribes, and also, though, recognizing that there are a number of programs that the Department of Education has that a lot of people feel are very important, such as special education and so forth. But what we've tried to do is to work through all of those different titles and so forth, identify where they were before 1979 when that cabinet position was created, and put them back where they had been in the first place for those that we keep. But then moving forward, recognize that we spent about $16,000 per student per year, and heck, it just hasn't made any difference. In fact, if you take a look at it, most of the scores have gone down. Math has gone up a whole 4 points in 4 decades. So look, there's a better way to do it. Get the bureaucrats out of this thing. They haven't educated a single student, but folks back home have. And so let's put some money back in for the folks back home. Let's put a lot of it into block grants, allow the states to actually make those decisions. And where we can save $1 billion, which is what we think we might be able to save by eliminating the department, that's a good step in the right direction. And at the same time, we get the bureaucrats out of schools in our communities.
Well, it's not surprising news. The math just wasn't adding up. He needed not only to get through confirmation, but even for a recess appointment, he needed the cooperation of both the Senate and the House to get a 10-day recess. Those votes were also in question. And so this was really becoming a major early fight for President-elect Trump. Now, that doesn't, however, mean that that this is going to change the philosophy that was behind the selection of Gaetz. Trump has a legitimate grievance with the Department of Justice. He wanted someone that was not culturally or professionally tied to the department, because he wants that department changed. You have to keep in mind that as soon as Trump came in after the 2016 election, the acting attorney general ordered the department to stand down and not assist him in his immigration efforts. I wrote at the time and that was, in my view, just deeply improper, and many of us viewed as pushing the ethical line. Ultimately, the Supreme Court upheld the thrust of those policies that Trump was pursuing. And after that, of course, we found that the Department of Justice ignored indications that the Russian collusion allegations were funded by the Clinton campaign and were baseless. And much of his first term was tied up in that investigation, which ultimately led to nothing. So he obviously wants to hit the ground running, to change this department, which is key to carrying out his other policies, particularly on immigration.
You know, I always think, well, as you're talking about all of that, and I think it's such a great point that you're making, Jonathan, because what is clear from this election and what is clear from, you know, some of our polling that showed that people want a significant overhaul in the government. And that's what I know this incoming president wants to see at Department of Justice. He does not want FBI agents like Peter Strzok, when asked about perhaps Trump could win, saying, we won't let it happen. He doesn't want to see the kind of, you know, corrupt behavior in that sense. You know, say, oh, we can smell the Trump support at Walmart. This is not impartial. Longtime DOJ people here. This is that there is partiality. And so it's clear that he wants his own person, you know, a pit bull, someone who's willing to shake it up. And he saw that in Gaetz. Who do you think is the next person who could really bring that kind of strong change that he clearly wants?
I think that he's going to be looking to people who are still somewhat outsiders. This is a hardened silo in terms of agencies. This is an agency composed largely of homogeneous people. They're largely lawyers or people who have been working within the legal field, and they have a close cultural identification. That makes changes sort of incremental. This is a president that is not interested in incremental changes. He wants the Department of Justice changed in a fundamental way.
President-elect Trump is promising to overhaul the Justice Department. He's now going to need a new Attorney General nominee to lead that effort. His transition team is working on that now because you've got his first pick, former Congressman Matt Gaetz, withdrawing. This is what he posted online just a short bit ago, writing, "There is no time to waste on a needlessly protracted Washington scuffle. Thus, I'll be withdrawing my name from consideration to serve as Attorney General. Trump's DOJ must be in place, ready to go day one." Trump added, quote, he was doing very well, but at the same time did not want to be a distraction for the administration, for which he has much respect. Now, Gaetz is a longtime Trump ally and critic of the Justice Department. The House Ethics Committee was investigating allegations that he used drugs illegally and had sex with a minor while in office. The committee refused to release its report on that inquiry because Gaetz resigned his congressional seat just after Trump nominated him for Attorney General. Even some Republicans had failed to embrace his nomination. When the math wasn't there, he stepped back. As for Democrats, they say they'll continue to evaluate each of the president-elect's nominees.
Voting on the president's nominees is a basic responsibility of the Senate. We'll take that responsibility very seriously between now and the end of the year.
And the transition is developing a new list of Attorney General nominees. Trump had already named his criminal attorney, Todd Blanche, as Deputy Attorney General. Former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi has been a strong ally. The acting Attorney General in Trump's first term, Matt Whitaker, Trump has already selected for a role as U.S. Ambassador to NATO, but of course he could always change things up if he wanted to.
Yep.
Martha, back to
you.
you.
Move around these chess pieces on the board however he wants. That is the process that's underway.
Breaking tonight, a lot happening during this show. Just announced, the president-elect has selected Pam Bondi as the next Attorney General of the United States. I'll read from this announcement from the President-elect. I'm proud to announce former Attorney General of the great state of Florida, Pam Bondi, as our next Attorney General of the United States. Pam was a prosecutor for nearly 20 years, where she was very tough on violent criminals and made the streets safe for Florida families. Then, as Florida's first female Attorney General, she worked to stop the trafficking of deadly drugs and reduce the tragedy of fentanyl overdoses deaths, which have destroyed many families in our country. She did such an incredible job that I asked her to serve as our Opioid and Drug Abuse Commission. During my first term, we saved many lives. Again, he goes on to say she's smart and tough and is America First fighter who will do a terrific job as Attorney General. Again, Pam Bondi from Florida, the next nominee for President-elect Trump, who obviously saw today that Matt Gaetz pulled his name from nomination as the votes were not there on Capitol Hill in the Senate for Matt Gaetz as Attorney General. Pam Bondi, now the name that the President-elect has put forward in that position. Byron, what do you think? Pam Bondi, she's obviously loyal. She's been on the trail. She's in the Trump world and well respected throughout that circle.
Yeah, clearly Trump is in a hurry, and one thing that the Gaetz nomination promised to be was really slow. It was going to drag its way through the Senate if it could ever even succeed, which probably couldn't. So Pam Bondi, 8 years as the Attorney General of the nation's third largest state. As you said, a big Trump supporter, close to Trump's daughter, Laura. Her appointment will be a big relief to the Senate Republicans who either opposed Gaetz or were on the fence about Gaetz. They will be happy to support Pam Bondi. Don't know what Democrats or what objections Democrats will raise, but unless she's committed a double murder or something we don't know about, she's going to get confirmed pretty easily, I think.
This would be the third woman, Leslie. Janet Reno, Loretta Lynch. Pam Bondi is positioned to be that. Your thoughts on this and the process that we saw develop today and the Gaetz withdrawal?
My sources have it that not only did he not have the votes, it was the second allegation of sex with someone underage. Have to remember, paying for sex is still illegal, and certainly underage. Having sex with somebody underage is statutory rape, technically by the law. Pam Bondi is a woman. She at least has the experience, I have to say, that Matt Gaetz was lacking. But at the same time, I think on my side of the aisle, what I'm hearing so far, Brett, is the concern that her loyalty to the president-elect might be stronger than her loyalty to the Constitution, and that's a concern. But I do agree with Byron that Republicans will have a sigh of relief, and I'm sure there's some Democrats that won't have a problem with her anywhere near as bad as with Matt Gaetz, especially if there's nothing really bad, a skeleton in her closet, especially when it comes to sexual impropriety.
Yeah. Democrats will say that, I think, about a lot of different picks that the president-elect makes, Ross, but you have to look at what happened in the election, and we come back to this again and again. The Trump folks and Republicans will say there was a message sent and that the president-elect deserves to have the people he deserves to want as long as there aren't major problems.
Right, and there's nothing incredibly abnormal in American history about having a loyalist as your attorney general. I think, the idea that the attorney general's office exists in some kind of pristine independence from the presidency has always been something of an illusion. I do think that Democrats and others who are worried about presidential overreach or the president using the attorney general's office to go after his political enemies, in a certain way might have been better off with Matt Gaetz as attorney general because he was such an immediate lightning rod, such a kind of caricature of a liberal's idea of a corrupt Republican. And I think in certain ways, having Pam Bondi in there will give skeptics and critics of the president less of an easy time than they would have had with Gaetz. Also, you won't have probably people resigning or declining to take jobs, which was an issue, I think, with the Gaetz nomination as well. I think the Justice Department will win more cases in front of the Supreme Court with her in charge than it would have with Gaetz, just because they'll have a higher caliber of lawyer.
Also, during this show, there was another development, and that is that Senator Bob Casey officially conceded to Dave McCormick in Pennsylvania. Now, the Senate is essentially set and will be sworn in the new Congress. The new balance of power in the Senate, 53 Republicans, 47 Democrats and independents who caucus with the Democrats. So Republicans flipped 4 seats, and it's now official. That recount essentially coming to the end with Bob Casey conceding. And that was a surprise win if you looked at that race from the beginning in Pennsylvania. A lot of people didn't think that Bob Casey could be taken down.
No, it was a real surprise, although McCormick had run a pretty good campaign since his earlier attempts to get to the Senate. So that was a big thing. Now, Republicans have gone from 49 to 53 in the Senate, and that gives them huge flexibility. Remember, they often lose Senator Murkowski, Senator Collins, maybe both of them, on votes. Well, that won't really matter anymore because they'll still have 51 votes if they lose a couple. So the flexibility that John Thune, the new Republican majority leader, will have will be huge compared to the recent past.
I want to play this soundbite from Kevin O'Leary. This is about the DOGE efforts. This is Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk will take up this organization that will be outside of the administration, but advising. Take a listen.
Why wouldn't you want DOGE? All it's saying is, let's be transparent when we make economic decisions. Stop letting bureaucrats do it because we send our representatives to Congress. I'll give you an example. We stopped shipping natural gas to Germany, and they're freezing in the dark. Why do we do that? Some bureaucrat decided that? Congress should decide. I love this idea. Transparency for the people. What's wrong with that?
And they'll be doing weekly podcast about what they're doing. They laid it out in the Wall Street Journal in the 30,000 feet, Leslie, saying identifying regulations at agencies to cut, present the list to the president who can pause them through executive action, identify minimum number of employees needed for agencies to run, conduct large-scale audits, make sure also that they show up to work. What do you think of this, Leslie?
I guess what bothers me is they're extremely paid volunteers on my tax dollar and all of Americans' tax dollars. In addition to that, I just don't think the numbers are realistic when we look at what economists are saying about, I mean, they already went from trillions to 500 billion. 3, it really concerns me, Brett, when we want to put thousands of Americans out of work. And that's what this will do with the cost-cutting measures that they propose. I'm very concerned about health care for veterans. I'm very concerned about programs like NASA and others. And I have to say I'm concerned about the 2 individuals, who want to run this, from my side of the aisle. So, and who they're floating is overseeing it. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah, it's I have to say,
Ross, but there is a hunger.
I think they're going to have a lot more success if they focus on regulation and regulatory overreach and looking at things in that area than if they're trying to propose big cuts to the federal budget, because they are ultimately, in that regard, just like a Simpson-Bowles commission, outsiders who can't make Congress do anything. So regulation is the place, I think, where they can make a difference.
Who's going to take the advice, as opposed to a president who is not in Simpson-Bowles.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.